Welcome back to another edition of This Week in 3 Minutes. I've called this one Blackout. Well, this week was interesting. Hungary announced that it now has 10 times more gold than it had in September. That's right, in October they brought in 31 metric tons of gold into their vault, stating that it was to provide monetary stability and lend the faith required in the Hungarian economy and its currency. So this is pretty interesting stuff. Venezuela announced this week that it is no longer accepting US dollars in international trade, which is fascinating again, where we have an economy literally, vocally, publicly stating it's not interested in using the US dollar. But what's really more interesting to me isn't that Venezuela doesn't want to use the US dollar. That's not shocking. But the public declaration that Venezuela is doing this lends the impression, of course, that there has to be somebody on the other side of that table accepting the situation, which means that the Europeans, who Venezuela mentioned, the euro, the renminbi, and the yen, that means those three economies, those three central banks and governments have set up an arrangement, most likely a swap arrangement with Venezuela in exchange for their goods, which of course largely are oil. This is a high school dance where, a few years ago it was like all the kids were lined up against the wall terrified who would be the first to dance. Well, now the dance floor is getting busy. I mean, this is really interesting with all these central banks and economies out there literally walking away from the U.S. dollar in a very public fashion. That should be cause for concern for a few people out there. We got an interesting warning out of the IMF this week that the way things are shaping up, if we're not careful, we're going to wind up in the second Great Depression. That's disconcerting. So thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. IMF. I didn't really want to see that, but thanks for the warning. What else have we got? Oh, yes. Well, China and Russia have now formalized what we knew was inevitable, that these two economies will be doing business with each other in their own currencies without the need or the desire or the use of any others. I mean, it's a bilateral trade agreement. We knew this was going to be formalized at some point. It looks like the pens are about to sign those documents. Of course, this is, again, no more U.S. dollars in use. And what we've got on the stock side of things this week is, well, we got a dead cat bounce. We knew it was highly likely, and if you don't know what a dead cat bounce is, throw a cat off the high enough building, it'll bounce. It's dead, but it bounced, and that's exactly what's happened here. We're back to the lows that we saw a few days back. Those small gains after that have not held, and we're reversing course, likely heading down to a few more dead cat bounces. So, in this instance, gold is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Thank goodness. And oh yes, this is the thing that really got me unnerved. Every 33 years, The Economist magazine, been around since 1843, puts out a special edition, an annual edition, forecasting what's going to happen in the next year. And usually the covers are very dynamic and fascinating. People study these things at length. But this year is the first time I or anybody has ever seen The Economist put out a cover that is entirely black. No illustrations, no pictures, no article highlights, nothing, just black. The year in 2019. That's all it says on it. So I don't know if they're trying to scare people or what, but got my attention. So what are they forecasting? I don't know. I'm at a loss to even speculate without sounding like a doom and gloom or conspiracy theorist. But I tell you, a cover like that's got to make you wonder. So, given what I'm hearing on the streets this week about the appetite by clients to move out of their stock positions into gold directly from the advisors' mouths, that tells me that sentiment is changing, and we're likely to see a nice run in gold. I tell you, I haven't felt this good about owning metals in 6 years, and thankfully it's there so I don't have to smoke marijuana to fall asleep. So, on that note, have a great weekend. See you next Friday.